Hello and welcome to Channel Africa Conversations. I'm your host, Peter Ndoro. September the 30th marked the end of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, known popularly as AGOA. It's a trade initiative with sub-Saharan Africa, which was passed in 2000 to provide duty-free access to US markets for thousands of products across the continent. African leaders from the continent's major economies, including South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria and Morocco, and even smaller countries like Lesotho, are worried at the impact that this may have on much-needed jobs. Last month, leaders gathered in Japan for a three-day development conference where Tokyo offered itself as an alternative investment destination. But I suppose in simple terms, questions should be asked. Is this not an opportunity for African leaders to rather put in extra effort to push hard for the inter-Africa trade initiatives that they've been talking about and planning for many years now? What is it that we don't quite understand about the importance of self-sufficiency on the continent? And why are foreign ministers perhaps not building Pan-African unity on trade cooperation, given the uncertainty of international markets? And in the end, who actually benefits from a divided Africa? Well, to help us unpack some of these issues, particularly along trade lines, is Victor Kgomoeswana, who's an author of several books, one of which is Africa's Open for Business, and the other, Africa Bounces Back. And he's also the Marketing and Communications Executive Director at the University of Limpopo. So in the intro, I talked a little bit about AGOA, but I think just in simple terms, explain to us what really lapsed on the 30th, what is AGOA and why are we worried?
Yeah, well, AGOA was giving us duty-free access. So when it lapses, it means your goods now are going to be subject to import duties, all kinds of taxes that go with import.
Right. So I grow maize in South Africa.
Yeah.
I send it to the US.
Yeah.
When it lands on US shores, Mr. US tax says, okay, this is £100 worth of maize. Here's 20% for it to go into the country.
Yeah, and because that was free, it would be affordable to the American market.
Right.
It was textiles, it was automotive, it was agricultural products, and it was a range of products. But automotive, the Roslins of this world, the Utenages, the VW, Polos, the cars were being made for the American market. The textiles, you had citrus farmers complaining. You had textiles, Lesotho. You know, that's the interesting thing, that the textiles were mainly a lot of, if you had President Trump talking about Lesotho, why is he picking on small Lesotho? It's because the Chinese factories that are in Lesotho being exported to the US as Lesotho products when they actually, the Americans knew it was Chinese. So the lapsing of that means South African goods are now going to be expensive. And when they're expensive, what will the importers do? What will the wholesalers do? They'll start looking for products elsewhere, which means we also now have to find alternative markets.
And the direct consequence, immediate consequence of that is what?
It's that if you were dependent on the US market, you are faced with a top line that's going to shrink. And you know, when the top line shrinks, you are selling less, you're going to have to get rid of some of your costs. And what is the cost that many businesses will look at as a fixed? It'll be salaries. And that's the problem. But that is if you are dependent. You know, there's this thing in business called concentration risk. So where you have more than 40, 50% of your business being with one customer. That one customer becomes America. President Trump comes into office. No economic diplomacy at all. He slashes all kinds of tariffs, and he comes and goes, he changes his mind, but eventually you're going to have to find, unless, of course, you can find alternative markets to go to.
I heard a shocking figure the other day in terms of the levels of inter-Africa trade. And I wonder, why is it that we need a shock for us to start to think about different markets and maybe even the interest story? The last shock we had was Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
And we started to mobilize and move around.
Yeah, and before that we had COVID, and then before that we had, I remember 1990, the Gulf War.
Yes.
Look, necessity, they say, is the mother of invention. Most people, if they don't have to, will be complacent and happy to just merrily go along. And that's what we've been doing. Because, Peter, there's no reason why any African entrepreneur should need the U.S. Everything we sell to the U.S. gets consumed in other African countries. What is the U.S.? Just over 300 million people. Africa has over 1.5 billion people, which means if you are looking for them, you will find them. And I mean, if you look at the small, medium enterprises that are not too, shall I say, betrothed to the international trade deals between Germany and U.S. and they're able to, there's a guy, I'm just going to use an example, Dr. Zakes Motene, who has got the license to export meat into the Middle East. You know, he's got halal certification, which means his abattoirs are able to export into the Middle East. What does that tell you? He doesn't need the U.S. No matter how much beef they consume, no matter how much goat meat they consume, he can do business. But the bigger businesses, because they have always been, oh, we are German, we manufacture in South Africa, we export to the U.S. It's not even a decision that the business leaders in Africa are making. There are markets on the African continent. Yes, it might be a bit costly to move the goods at the moment because the infrastructure is not what it should be. But even if it's that much expensive, Peter, I would rather struggle to move my wares into Zambia than to go all the way across the Atlantic. The second thing is what you need to do. We have this BRICS alliance that hasn't really delivered much for us. Number one, we have Russia, we have China, we have India, these have 20 times more than the American market, and they have more millionaires now than them, which means they can afford our wares. The problem is we are happy to be part of the BRICS Plus, but we don't talk economic diplomacy again. And I hope that when you talk to the ambassadors, they'll be able to explain to you what it takes, where the gridlocks are. But at the moment, I think this was a necessary shock. I'm sorry for people who are going to lose jobs, but it will be temporary. And I would rather lose the jobs in the temporary, but be forced to find more intra-Africa trade partners than have to continue relying on the cross-Atlantic trade.
What's been holding us back with this inter-Africa trade story? It's not new.
No.
And it's something we've talked about, I would even say, for decades.
For decades. But you know what? The mentality, don't undermine the power of the mind. And I know people are going to say, oh, there he goes back to slavery. To liberate yourself, really liberate yourself, Peter, so that when I say, do you know a story I had at one of the South African missions? That Aliko Dangote tried to come into South Africa once. You know Aliko Dangote is the richest man in Africa. And an official at the embassy, at the consulate, asked him to send 3 months bank statements. Exactly. That tells you, which means we don't even know our own. And by the way, when I talk Dangote, people think, that's all there is. No, there isn't. There are so many millionaires and billionaires there. So I think the mentality that if we are selling to the States, we are really selling to a quality market, as opposed to, why don't we get our goods into? Ask the people who sell wine. They will tell you how lucrative Nigeria has been for them. And not even the top-end premium wine, just any wine from South Africa. You can make a living as a wine farmer selling only to Nigeria, and that's not all the countries there are. So I am really confident that in time, one, the small and medium enterprises will open the channels. Two, those entrepreneurial leaders in Africa like Stephen Sars, the people who have always seen, and then the banks, don't undermine the role of the banks, because the banks that are present in other countries will start sharing these insights and these opportunities with their clients, and we will be okay. I think if the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat can continue building the infrastructure, the banks of Africa can continue to build that banking and money transfer infrastructure. The border gates, as you know, are improving. The Beit Bridge now is much, much better than it was 10 years ago. If we just keep making those moves, eventually we will be fine.
The infrastructure part, I think, is the easy bit.
Yeah.
I suspect, and this is, maybe you can guide me because you've traveled and you understand the workings, there's a political will that's required here.
Yeah.
I see a few countries that say, if you've got an African passport, you don't need a visa.
Yeah.
Just come.
Yeah.
Why isn't it that right across the continent?
No, it's because I don't like to use the word. I used to say small-mindedness.
Yeah.
If you and I are here, we have somebody coming from Zimbabwe, and we say we want to charge you $60 to pay for the visa, to apply, whatever it is we are doing, you know. I say, no, Peter, let's let the man come in visa-free. We just want to check that his passport is legit and he's not here for some crooked business. He will spend $600 in the first 2 days. He will come into restaurants, he will go into our shopping malls, he will go to movies, he will... that's the small-mindedness I'm talking about. African countries, because no, they think duties, visa fees are revenue, forget that they would make 10 times that if they just allowed the movement of goods and people. Fortunately, there are countries that are open. In the Zimbabwe and Zambia now has the Chirundu border post, which is one stop, which means you don't have the reason to now be paying bribes at 2 stops, but you move much quicker. Beit Bridge, as I say, moving much faster. Rwanda, I think, has about 5 border posts around it. There are one-stop border posts with the countries like Uganda and all that. So there are these victories that are being made. Aviation also, Peter, is getting better and more affordable. And therefore, the movement of goods and services will become smoother. And as long as that is happening, we will be getting there slowly. It's too slow for my liking, but knowing where we come from, I'm encouraged.
What will happen then to the regional bodies that are in existence already? ECOWAS, East African Community, SADC, COMESA, SACAO, you name it, we've got them. African Continental Free Trade Area comes into play. What happens to these?
We need those regional blocks. And the reason we do is so that it's much easier if you're Tanzanian to do business with Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, and Ethiopia, and Sudan, than to do business maybe, say, with Angola, which is in another block. I think they will be, if you like, it's almost like if we're going to tackle the African Continental Free Trade Area, we do it in blocks. There's more affinity among economic community of West African states, even with the departure of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. But you see, they're departing and say, we want to form our own alliance. At least amongst them, they'll be able to do business better. So I think we still need those regional blocks, but they just mustn't be too obsessed with their own region, because eventually, ECOWAS country, there are countries that are SADC and East African, like the DRC and Tanzania. So when you're doing business in Tanzania, then you have SADC and East African Community, which means you have a much larger region than just EAC or SADC. So we still need them so that they can give more regional and localized, small-scale practicality to the free trade.
You mentioned China, Russia, India. I'm curious now, you mentioned China in particular. You don't see a lot of African companies formed in China, but many coming to Africa. Yes, there may be new markets, but is it not another form of what we had with the Americans?
Trade relations are always going to have a deficit and a surplus. Somebody's going to be having a surplus, another a deficit. It doesn't have to be that way. If we agree that BRICS is proposing a different kind of diplomacy, international relations, then we must see it. But that's where the political will comes in. Are the South Africans willing to say to the Chinese, we are going to import a certain proportion of the goods from China, and we're going to insist that you must start building some of them in South Africa. So when we see Haval, we see Jayco, we see Jetor, are we happy to allow these cars just to come in? Or are we going to insist that they must be assembled in South Africa? That you and I can't do. Maybe the business chambers can start lobbying the politicians to do that. But unless we do it, then in that case, yes, you're right. We are going to find a very one-sided relationship which will not benefit Africa at all. At the moment, the trade flow is just too skewed. We send them cheaper resources. They send us finished goods, which means the greater jobs are in China. The development, the industrialization is happening in China. Here we remain a primary economy. That is not sustainable and that's not desirable. And that's just downright wrong.
When I look at the map of the world, the way it's drawn is fictitious because it makes Africa look smaller
Yeah.
than the US. And I'm told that we can fit Russia, we can fit
Russia,
US
China,
into-
India, US, Europe, and we will still have enough space.
So this then begs the question.
Yeah.
We are worried about tariffs into the US.
Yeah.
If we came as a collective, can we not say, hang on, for your cell phones, you need our lithium, you need our diamonds, you need our gold, you need our copper now. And for you to access these products, your tariffs can't be this for our exports, our other exports. Is there no way to have a voice that says, this is Africa's position, as opposed to, you see 5 West African presidents, small nations sitting in the White House, and then Lesotho, South Africa, and Egypt are suffering in the meantime?
Definitely. But apart from just the diplomatic relations, Peter, we need African industrialists. The $20 billion refinery that Aliko Dangote built, to me, was a very good bellwether that says to all African investors, Patrice Motsepe, Nicky Oppenheimer, yes, Mr. Rupert, we like the fact that you have the diamond walk in Sandton City, but we like the jewelry design. We would like the goods that you're selling in the diamond walk not just to be imported, we want some of them to be made here. Those are not decisions that only politicians can make. The business people should and be able to, and isn't it interesting that even when Dangote built the refinery, he had to struggle to sell it, the refined petroleum products in, that he ended up exporting to the Middle East, he exports here to South Africa, and 2 weeks ago he exported for the first time to the United States. So we need the business people to also come along and start investing. The people who are running the multinationals, the Volkswagens, the Toyotas, should start asking for more than just assembling the cars. They should be making those control panels here. And platinum is back in vogue now because the EVs are not taking off as we thought. So those autocatalytic converters, some of them that are going to go into the cars that are being assembled in East London, in Roslyn, in Waldloo, in Pretoria, should be having a larger proportion made here, because you are right, the minerals that make them are coming from the African countries. But it's up to the the leaders of business to be able to lead like people like Dangote did.
So in the short term, what do we do? Because we, at the time of recording, it was day 1 of no AGOA. There will be pain in the short term. What do we do to fix that? And how long will it take for us to say, okay, we've gotten over the shock, this is the new setup?
You and I in the media, Peter, we have to tell the story of success. I would say, if I were in your position, let's go and look for people who are continuing trading. Let's not fool ourselves. Business people are much more entrepreneurial. The people who really have a lot to lose have started finding other markets. Let's start hearing about them and find out where they are finding these alternative markets. The diplomats must get together. China, I know, when President Trump started threatening to remove money for research, the Chinese, I think, met with some university leaders and started asking, what can we do? Because there's money to do research, we are interested. Japan, as you know, has been doing this student exchange for a very long time. So there are alternatives. It means we have to find out where already there are bridges built and channels, we grow them. Where there are alliances that have not had any trade and investment content, we do that. Already, the top 3 investors in greenfields projects in Africa are China, the Middle East, and the US. China, Middle East, and the US, which means US is not really holding as many aces as they thought. All about it is going to find more investment from China, but insist on jobs being created here, so that it's a fairer trade exchange, and you get the Middle East. When they come in, they come big, the Middle Eastern investors. They put in more than $40 billion in one project, renewable energy in Mauritania. So they come in big. Big ticket investment items come from the Middle East. So it's about finding those kinds of partnerships. But it's a partnership between business, civil society, and and government.
We have a lot of unique goods.
Yeah.
So that the US, as much as it's a big country in terms of economic power, there are importers in that country that only want the South African goods, the African goods, because of their quality, and they don't want to go to other parts of the world. There may be alternatives, but inferior.
Yeah.
Is the US president perhaps taking a gamble as well in his home market in coming after Africa?
He certainly is, and maybe that's why he couldn't get the budget passed. I mean, this, what do they call it when they couldn't? Yeah, let's just say they couldn't pass the budget, which means there are many federal workers who are going on unpaid leave as we speak. Yes, he's taking a risk, and that's exactly that. The Americans elected President Trump. They call themselves the greatest democracy. Let business people start prevailing on him. Let's the Corporate Council for Africa, all those guys who are doing business with African countries. In fact, they are doing it more than we give them credit. You know, this taco, Trump always chickens out. It's always because he will make the pronouncement, and some business people behind the scenes will say, hey, wait, you're actually killing us. I told you, 2 weeks ago, Dangote exported petroleum into the US. Now, for many who have been saying, drill, baby, drill, whatever, he was saying, no, we're going to have got oil here, we got to refine. But people who are at the coalface buying petroleum, refined petroleum, had to tell him, Mr. President, we don't have enough. There are gaps here, and for us to keep your trucks going, we need to buy from even Nigeria. So I'm saying, that's why I said business, government, and civil society. Sometimes it's going to be business being given a better hearing, because they have affinities, but I'm sure they're already doing it, and that's why you had with South Africa. They said, oh, they have given us now a chance to resubmit. And then with tariffs, it was going to be 50%, now it's 15%. So they are prevailing even as we speak, because they know the reality that he doesn't always look at.
We've spoken about visas, but there are other issues. If I want to, I'm in Benin, and I want to go to Togo. I might have to go to France first, instead of a short hop across. We've got proof that Africans can do airlines. When we look at Ethiopia Air, for example, why don't we have this ability to duplicate the Ethiopia Airs?
No, there's Rwanda Air now, which is opening very cleverly, going into small destinations. You have ASKY, is it ASKY? Although it's affiliated with Ethiopian Airlines. You have Kenya Airways, seemingly it's on a rebound. Kenya Airways, it's going into those routes, and of course Ethiopian Airlines. I don't know. Aviation is another thing that African Airlines, we were supposed to have an alliance or code-share between SAA and Kenya Airways, and that fell through because South African Airways wanted, I can guess, that they might have wanted to dominate that partnership. So while they are doing that, Kenya Airways is opening other partnerships. They are buying more aircraft. Boeing is not able to keep up with the supply as we speak because of airlines like that. So eventually, you are right, it will take off. I remember being in the DRC, having to fly from Kinshasa to Lubumbashi. It was long ago, more than 10 years ago. And there I did catch a flight. It wasn't very comfortable. You know, and people flew back to South Africa, went to Kenya, and then came back. I took 45 minutes. They took 45 hours.
Wow.
So it's also going to come from people who are traveling, and it's going to open. Remember, Peter, transport and logistics is in the top 10 destinations for investors. So transport and logistics is in the top 10 areas where people are putting money, which means the ports are getting better. The airports, when you travel, you see them, are getting much, much, much better. The railroads, yes, they are heavily geared, like the Mombasa, the Madaraga Express, like the Ethiopian high-speed train, like the How train. Yes, they are overly indebted, but at least they are opening alternatives and showing that you can do high-speed trains. Maybe they are the school fees we need to pay to understand that the possibilities are there.
What gives you hope that we'll get it right?
Because I've seen much, much worse, Peter. Man, I've seen worse. I started preaching this gospel in 2002. I remember where we were. I remember, say, you're flying to Nigeria, you're crazy. I would be in Nigeria and you'd have guys with 5 phones sitting here. You would not even be comfortable to swipe your ATM card because there were no point-of-sale devices. And if they were, you couldn't be sure. Now we are talking Nigerian banks being in the top 1,000 according to the British publication, The Banker. Nigerian bankers are actually premium bankers in Africa. They are growing faster, the likes of Access Bank, Zenith. They are not only growing into other African countries, they are going into Europe. So what gives me hope is that I've seen much, much worse. And I don't think Africa was condemned to just be in the hellhole forever.
Yeah, one lives in hope, and I hear people like His Excellency Mene, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, saying the right things, countries ratifying and signing the agreements. And in the meantime, Jabu Sitole, maybe in Soweto, has got a small little business and he wants to export things to Zambia. When will it start to happen for him? Because someone will see his products online and they'll say, I want. How do we enable these small businesses to be part of this thing?
It is happening, Peter. You know, festivals, what is the festival they had? The Delicious Festival.
Yes, yes.
These events, the tourism indaba, they are Africans who are doing business. I can assure you, that's why I'm saying perhaps we are not talking about them enough. They are not on the scale they should, but it is happening. Thanks to what you mentioned also inadvertently, the online options, because people can now build online platforms. The Yokos of this world, the people now can pay across borders. There are countries in Africa that are looking for their own currencies that are receiving other African countries. It's called inertia in physics. When you have been seated for a long time, you start moving. There's resistance, but you will move eventually and gather speed. If you have been moving fast and you want to slow down, there's resistance. I just think what we're verbalizing is inertia. It is a reality, and we need Wamkele Menes and people to talk about what they're doing. But I like the fact that they are not just talking. They are creating infrastructures. They are creating online platforms. They are creating the infrastructure that we need. It's going to be a point where you say the Jabu in Soweto must get on that plane and go to Malawi. They will meet business partners there. They won't meet them sitting in Soweto. And that's what I've been preaching. Catch that flight, get into another country. You'll be amazed. If you are scared, go on holiday first. And while you're on holiday, you'll meet so many people that you'll come back to do business with.
All right, let's finish where we started. And at the time of having this conversation, AGOA is finished. It's the 1st of October today. Should we say, okay, this is another shock, don't panic, let's move quickly, and AGOA won't matter?
Definitely.
Is that your thoughts?
Definitely, because AGOA shouldn't matter that much. We shouldn't have to have so many people's livelihoods dependent on one country. And AGOA could have been renewed if they had a different president, but maybe it's almost like if you have that uncle who keeps bailing you out with pocket money, one day the uncle either gets other responsibilities or he moves on or the uncle dies. You have to learn to fend for yourself. African countries have to fend for themselves. Luckily, there are many other potential uncles and cousins from other African countries, from BRICS, from the Middle East, that they should be able to ride with.
Victor Kgomoeswana, always a pleasure talking about this amazing continent with you. It always fills me with hope that we can have a better day. Definitely. And we pray that those days come soon.
Thanks, Peter, for keeping on talking about it as well, because if influential media people don't talk about it, we then spread the message of despair, and that's the last thing we need. Africa needs better, and you are part of that campaign, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much indeed.
Bye.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of Channel Africa Conversations. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and I hope that you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It certainly gave me hope that we don't have to worry about things like AGOA expiring, because we have the capacity to change things. Before I go, a reminder that we always want to hear from you, so please comment in the comment section below. And also, you can see on the screen, you've got our social media pages and also an email where you can contact us. And we'd love to know what you thought of this program, and also what kind of conversations you want us to have in the future and with whom? And I look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, from me and the team, until the next time, goodbye.